Hi, welcome to today's What's Become Clear. I'm Steve Wyckoff.
And I'm Kevin Honeycutt. Thanks for watching. So, Steve, you recently were in a meeting with a lot of college professors. I'm dying to know what that was about and how that went over.
It was a great day, a great group of people, and as I told them, I kind of, when you're doing a new presentation to a new type of group, I don't often do college professors. I wasn't quite sure how to approach, but what I did was I settled in on a question that I've been asking audiences: what's the biggest issue we face in education? And so the way I organized my presentation was, what do I think the biggest issues are in education? So it was really good. I enjoyed it.
Now, you've asked this question to other groups, different with this group?
Well, I really didn't. I did ask them what they thought, but it was more about me telling them what I thought about what the issues were.
Let me ask you this. You've been asking this for some time. 4 years ago, same question, same group, versus now. Has that conversation changed?
Absolutely. And in fact, Kevin, we're having conversations today about what's going on in schools, mostly driven by money, that we couldn't have had 3 years ago. In fact, I was in a meeting last week with superintendents, and Gary Sechrist, the superintendent at Lyons, made the comment, we could not have had these conversations 3 years ago.
This is a good thing.
Yeah, obviously we would like to have more money in education, and that's one of the issues is money, but it's also leading us to have conversations about doing some things that we would have never thought about doing.
I looked at your presentation. You broke it into four parts. So how did you start that?
Well, number one, I think we have higher test scores and less well-educated children. That we are focusing insanely on raising test scores for test score's sake. And Kevin, I think where the issue with this is this. I think at some point in time we said, well-educated, highly successful kids do really well on standardized tests. Therefore, if we help all kids do well on standardized tests, they will be highly educated and successful. And I think we've confused correlation with causal, and then we reversed it. And we're working really hard to have kids get higher test scores under the assumption that with higher test scores will come kids who are more successful.
Was there ever a time when kids doing well on standardized tests did lead to success? Was there an alignment ever, or was this just a bad
Well,
bit of
I
logic?
think there was a correlation, but I'm not sure there's ever been a causal effect there. And in fact, we never used to focus on what's on the standardized test. We didn't know most times what was on the standardized test. Well, now we know very well what's on the state assessments, and we focus on that just constantly. I was with two people last week, and one of them said she had been at her child's school, and what she asked me was, is everything about the state assessment? And I said, well, why do you ask? And she said, well, the teacher would make a point, show the kid something, and say, now this is really important, it's going to be on the state assessment. Move to the next point. Well, this is really important, it's going to be on the state assessment.
Right.
And I said, well, yeah, in many cases, that is exactly the focus of what they're doing in class. Well, the other person that was there said, hey, he said, you have no idea. I went to my son's school for an evening parent-teacher conference, PTA kind of thing, and he said, the whole focus on the meeting was how parents can help raise test scores. And, and part of what I asked the professors on Friday was, do you think that standardized test scores are a good indicator of what the children have learned, how they've done in school, and are they a good indicator of how well the teachers have done? And every head in the room said, no, we don't believe that. And, the example I used, we've talked about it on these webcasts before, was the hagwons in the schools in South Korea that are evening schools, private schools, where the kids go for 4 hours every day, 100 kids in a class, one teacher, and they cram for standardized assessments. They blow the lid off standardized assessments. They have no creativity, no innovation, everything, all of that they depend on Americans to do. And I worry that we're headed down the wrong path. I don't know, what do you think about the whole testing thing?
I agree, and I wanted to sort of cut that apart again. Your statement was, help me get this
We
right.
have higher test scores and less well-educated kids.
Okay, because what I thought right away is that definition of well-educated, I think if we could come to some agreement on what we want well-educated to mean,
Uh-huh.
if it means doing well on a standardized test, we're on our way.
Yeah.
But if it means remaining competitive and innovative and creative, we're on our way out.
Yeah. Well, and Kevin, I think you bring up a really good point. What is a well-educated person? You know, one of the discussions that I've had, not with this group of professors because it was a different group, but when I have had discussions with some professors and talk about preparing kids for careers, they're aghast that we would even suggest such a thing. Education's not about preparing kids for work. They tell me education is about understanding, you know, these things that we talk about in college. Well, that may be true, all well and good, but you know, I have 2 sons. I'm really happy they're gainfully employed and successful.
And they probably are too.
Yeah, they are too.
Right.
And both have college degrees, and one has a master's degree, so they are probably, quote, well educated. But when I talk to them about those kinds of things that mean they are well educated, they weren't all that impressed with that stuff.
Now, we've come down slightly. We're on the same side of the coin often in conversations. Sometimes it's like preaching to the choir, but not always. You know, you rail against some things that we keep in curriculum, and you don't know why we keep them in curriculum.
Dead white European authors.
I tend to hold on to wanting kids to have some exposure to Shakespeare. So I want them to understand Greek drama, maybe just a little bit, to understand the plight of mankind all the way back to Pompeii or whatever. We can agree or disagree on that, but and I don't know where I was going with this entire point.
But let me, you know, sometimes you overemphasize to make a point.
Yes.
I'm not saying throw all of that out. Let's just give a fair share to preparing kids for their future. You know, the other side of the argument is, and I've had this conversation with my friend Roger Schenck, that you know, he was on the board of the Great Books, and he said they behaved as if there has not been a great book written in the last 75 to 100 years. Well, hogwash. There's been lots of good stuff written. Why are the same dead white European authors the only good authors? You know, the other thing is, it's one thing to say kids ought to learn that stuff, but if they're not learning it, and most of our kids aren't learning it anyway, I would much rather have kids that love to read than to say we made them read what we think's important.
Right. And I agree. What I was getting to before, and thanks for bringing me back around to the point that I try to have, is
It's
that
okay, at your age, memory gets to be a problem.
starting to is if we can do 2 things at one time. If my kid can learn about this and get some skills that will serve him well in the workplace, why not? Why can't those things be aligned? Those careers be aligned with the things that we're teaching or not teaching? And I agree. We don't teach a lot of the stuff we say we teach. Then we don't really teach it. I mean, we teach it.
We cover it.
But they don't learn
They don't
it.
learn
They
it.
don't learn it,
Well,
or they don't remember it.
That's a whole nother conversation that I used to have with my grad students when I was teaching in the administration program. Is learning a necessary condition to say that teaching occurred?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I always use the example, I taught my dog to whistle, he just didn't learn.
Right. So the best teachers are the ones, I think, and we might agree on this, that create experiences that kids have, and through the experience, they remember, they learn, and they see big connections. They see the value. They never have to say, why do I need to know this? The question answers itself in the process. And that's project-based learning. That's career simulation. That's these things that we keep talking about.
And if we were really creative and innovative as teachers, we'd figure ways to do both at once. Probably the worst part is the teacher that stands at the front of the room and tells the students about it and says, you ought to know this. Well, one of the questions I always ask students who have graduated from high school, if you took a test last year and got an A on it, but you couldn't pass it today, did you learn it?
Wasted time.
Wasted time.
Wasted time.
So point number 1 though was on standardized tests. We're drilling and killing our kids.
So we're going to hit 3 more areas in a series. Will you do that with me?
Yeah, we'll do 3 more.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching.